right. We come together freely to share our journeys, to learn from each other, and to relish life. Open your minds to new ideas, set aside your concerns, and be in this time and in this space. Welcome to the UU Church of Tullahoma. We do not pass an offering plate, but we could always use your support. If you'd like to donate to the work of the church, if you're here, there's a nice little shaker box back there next to Larry. You can put a donation there. Or you can mail a check to P.O. Box 331, Tullahoma, Tennessee. I don't know the zip code.
37388.
37388. Thank you. All right. Who would like? Rick would like to light the chalice. Thank you. Where we find the darkness of ignorance, let us bring the light of reason. Where the darkness of despair prevails, may we share the light of hope. When we encounter the darkness of hate, let us shine the light of love. Thank you. All right, announcements. Who has it? Gene?
I have two hybrid cars. One is a hybrid Prius and the other is a hybrid Ford C-Max. And either of those two are for sale if anybody's interested.
Oh, thank you.
The only problem is they each have 194,000 miles on them. But when I checked the NADA price, that only reduced their value about $3,000 or $4,000.
Okay, thank you. Any other announcements?
I'll amplify what Tom said about the group that's been going on for a year or so on Thursday night. It is in a reorganization phase with a thought that we would shift to a series produced by a think tank called Rethink X, which has to do with changes in society and addresses a wide variety of things from society to environment to energy to infrastructure. We are in, as he said, sort of a reorganization phase. We went on a hiatus and we'll get a little bit more of that out, but think about it, and we'll try not to interfere with Tom's writing group. We may be moving to Wednesday to accommodate the Zen group, which Chuck is still, I think, active in. So anyway, just to amplify what Tom said, thank you.
We will be having PFLAG meetings here at the church. It'll be a week from Tuesday, so it's the second Tuesday of every month at 6 o'clock. So not this Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. Any other? Yeah. Okay.
The newsletter went out Friday, so if you didn't get it, please let me know. Let's see what we've got coming up. At the MAC, the Millennium, or the Manchester Arts Center, they've got Macbeth coming up, starting September 16th. So if you would all like to see that, or if you homeschool kids, and I'm taking my kids for part of their English. So that's coming up. Anything else?
I think there's also a fundraiser going on at the Millennium also, a pancake breakfast sort of thing, and I think it's,
Do you know
it's coming up. I'll check on it.
that? Okay. Tom's going to check on that for us.
The writers group is going to meet on September the 8th at 6 p.m.
Yeah, and that's kind of
Here.
an organizational thing, right?
Okay.
That's what we're going to do, and then if anybody wants, if we don't get, half a dozen people, we're just going to say no, and that's it, and we'll do it somewhere else. There are other writing groups too in town, so a number of my friends that have been in the Not Yet Dead Poets, for example, they are part of that, so
Okay.
we may, but I may just defer to them and we'll see.
Perfect. Any other announcements that we have going? All right. So for our reading today, y'all know I don't do responsive readings. So I found this one. It's by Gwen Matthews, and I found it on the uua.org site. And it's called Feel That. Feel that, each breath, every inhale, exhale. We are living, breathing, connected. We are the whole, complete, beautiful selves that we were born to be. Feel that? In your bones, in your muscles, in your heart, in your blood, That is the extraordinary you, the you who was born for this time, this place, in this moment. Feel that? The struggle, the worry, the pain, the loss, the grief, it is still you. You are still whole, complete, beautiful, extraordinary. Feel that. Found that and thought that was absolutely beautiful. Now it is my pleasure to welcome our speaker today, Mr. Wayne Steele. Thank you for coming.
Well, how is everyone today?
Great.
Damn.
I'm glad that you had me. Sorry I missed. I think it was in July. Oh,
This. Yeah. This is not blotting you out. It's just avoid confusion for us.
is it?
It's fine.
I'm good.
You're
Okay.
fine. You're fine.
I didn't know if it's up high enough.
But the camera needs to be adjusted.
Does it?
Does it need to be readjusted?
We're good.
Oh, we're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're good.
But thanks for having me. I know in July I had either a migraine or COVID or something, and I missed being your speaker. And initially, when I was asked about this, of course, I'm a candidate for Congress, so politics is unavoidable. But I'm framing this in the way of growing up Baptist and transitioning to Unitarian. And that journey. You having trouble hearing me? Can everybody hear me? Okay. All right. Well, I'm Wayne Steele, and I'm running for the 4th Congressional District against Scott Desjardins as a Democratic Party nominee. Do what?
Yay.
I'm the Democratic Party nominee, but I'm also a reformist. There are 5 other independents in the race, but none who hold the moderate values that I do. I know we have Republicans in all faiths, so I'm glad you're here to listen, because I'm glad to talk and listen to anyone who's willing to have civil discord. Some of my story is traumatic, so I've lessened the details so as to not trigger anyone here or who's listening on Zoom or YouTube. My childhood upbringing was raised by 2 parents who were irreligious. The attitude in the post-Vietnam era about how the government was corrupt and everything was rigged, so there's no point in voting. It's all a system to keep those in power, and those who are at the bottom remaining at the bottom. What I gathered from their view of religious organization was about the same. They were both raised during this irreverent time period, and I've carried this irreverence throughout my life. Both sides of my family were roughly equal Southern Baptist in holiness. So conservative Democrat back in the day turned conservative Republican today, and either way, strict limits on what was okay and not okay in conducting one's life. Both my parents didn't like to be told what to do with their life. So this allowed me to think about and have my own opinions about what I wanted to do with mine. I was brought home at my mother's mother's house, the end of Market Street, in March of '84, in the same car I learned how to drive in. Learned how to drive in April of '99. That was a '69 Buick Skylark. Big 4-door, not the Sportster, which was baby poop green. I know I'm in good company though, because we know what color that 60s, 70s green is, right? And it got roughly 8 miles to the gallon. My grandmother's house was right around the corner from the very first Baptist church I was taken to as a baby, called Brogan Avenue in Fayetteville. We were so close, I remember walking to church with her when I was about 4 to 5 years old. Around age 5, we moved into a neighborhood behind a family who had a small farm. He was once widowed, a World War II vet who lost both legs to the Nazis in Germany at age 18. I forgot to mention it, but he did that voluntarily. He was not drafted. And she was once divorced, once widowed, retired working woman of the 50s through the 80s. My dad had a lengthy conversation with him when we first moved in, and I became very close to them. I think my dad would have been closer to them had Mr. Ray not asked one particular question in the first conversation. Do you go to church? He was never friendly to them from that day forward as he had been that day. He didn't mind me playing over there at their house or helping them on their farm, but he didn't go out of his way to see them or to be friendly, but I would call him cordial. The backstory I didn't know at the time was that he was a 60s greaser, loved motorcycles and drinking, and his family tried to shove religion down his throat to sober him up. By the time I reached second grade, Miss Margie, who was Mr. Ray's wife, talked me into going to vacation Bible school with her. It was a fun week, although I didn't understand the undertone of the reason why you invited so many kids to one place in the summer, other than the fact that you're giving parents a few hours reprieve from their children. By this time, the major traumas of my life had not started yet, so I suppose if I had picked up on the need to be saved from something, it hadn't clicked in yet. I went back to vacation Bible school in the 5th grade, and this was after my mom had nearly died when I was 9, after only having a chance of survival at 5%. And her mother had the beginning stages of early onset Alzheimer's, with the removal of a non-malignant brain tumor. There were other traumas as well, though. During that Thursday sermon on July the 20th, 1995, where the preacher was far more serious, I know I believed the Christian theme that Jesus died on the cross for my sins and I could be saved to go to heaven if I admitted this. But there was something else far more pressing on my mind when I stood up from that pew. Something has to change. I have to do something different. Looking back over it now, years later, I realized I needed something in my life that I thought would move me forward in a positive way. I'm glad it was not drugs or gangs or violence. Sadly today, the very woman who led me in that sinner's prayer also too has Alzheimer's. See, one of the things I learned in a month-long PTSD treatment program in New Mexico was mine and my dad's relationship didn't sour because I got older. It soured because we were both so traumatized by watching Mom almost die. And when she didn't, we became jealous of one another because we hadn't sought mental health treatment. He had gone a few times to mental health treatment when he was younger and had a negative opinion about it. I can't recollect enough to remember why he didn't think it was or could be necessary in life. I also learned about my childhood during treatment that I had passively wished he weren't around anymore. I had passively wished I didn't have to deal with all this pain I couldn't verbalize. In the midst of growing up as a teenager in church, I still heard things I knew that just didn't sit well with me. The fire and brimstone that Doug alluded to in last week's words. I did have a cheat sheet. I did watch this last week's. See how it went. One of those things that didn't sit well was that God would punish people for being who with who they loved in the way they choose. And again, God gives free choice, right? And if one prays and prays on something, and they keep receiving the same message that they're headed in the right path in life, then one is to follow that path because it's where God is leading them, right? Then why would God punish a same-sex couple, a biracial couple, those who are unwed and living together? Why would he also choose to punish the mother who decides to end a pregnancy for her own good conscience, when in Exodus 21, God places more value on the mother's life than on a premature birth? The Bible are God's exact words, right? At the same time, my dad would ask me from time to time, so you believe every word in that book is directly from God? He only asked if God himself wrote the book. He gave no opinion of his own that I remember. At some point, I had to have said, well, the church said it's his words, inspired by him for man to write. This was another lesson of Dad's about challenging authority. And now, as I understand it, being irreverent. The next big shift for me was twofold. I went to massage therapy school in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah at the age of 21. In the obvious sense, I moved to the Mormon faith's Mecca, their Holy Land. This was after seeing a coworker going through the need of an abortion and carrying that out, and also bonding with fellow gay friends. In the less obvious sense, in massage therapy school, we learned about acupressure and acupuncture, and how this tied in with Taoism and the Tao Te Ching. Stephen Mitchell's translation says in verse 1 through 4 of part 1, chapter 1, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnamed is the eternal name. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. So for me, that says that who claims to have the truth may not be the truth. And that when you start naming it, you start placing value in it, and you start having expectations in what you desire rather than leaving it to the mystery of letting it manifest on its own. What I also took from this is that the heavens, God, source, the beginning, Jesus Christ, Muhammad, Buddha, isn't something that's true because we have named it, and anyone who claims to have the answers isn't the true or eternal. When we take the mystery out of things, we get caught up in our own humanly desire of what we wish all of the divine to mean. This theologized non-theology, combined with a huge dichotomy of living in a city for which a religion is seen by many around the world as a cult, and in fact taught in the Baptist church is a cult. Encountering people who I became friends with who were atheists, agnostics, Jack Mormons. Do you know what Jack Mormons are? I got one shaking head. It means you were raised Mormon and you didn't necessarily get excommunicated, but you don't follow the faith anymore. You drink, you might be gay, you live outside of their norm or whatever. and some of those that I knew were officially excommunicated from the church, the Mormon church. And I also saw firsthand how this persecuted faith could also throw out onto the streets of downtown Salt Lake City as trash or dump their 12 to 18-year-old LGBT children left to fend for themselves, who were taught if they were gay or trans, they would end up with AIDS or on heavy drugs like needle-dope methamphetamines. Yet they continue to live out this self-fulfilling prophecy. It made me disgusted at all forms of organized religion. This was roughly 2005, 2006, in the heightened years of animosity against Muslims. I forgot to mention that my senior year of high school is when 9/11 occurred. So my whole worldview was shaped by two political parties that got into bottomless pits of debt to go to war with countries who did not personally perpetrate the terrorist attacks. The memory of being taught in the Baptist church to be careful with who you associate with, because you could be seen as guilty by association, really started to resonate while living in Utah. I talked to a person of great influence in the Baptist church at home while I was living in Utah and asked, what if the religions of the world are just like language? They're different interpretations of how we describe things. She said something to the effect that if you're comparing religions, you need to talk to our pastor because he studied those in seminary school. But at that moment, I knew that was the exact person I didn't need to talk to. Just because you talk to someone who's a doctor and they're a gastroenterologist, you wouldn't talk to them about heart diseases or nervous system disorders. You go to the source who knows. This was when I knew I could no longer consider myself fully Baptist or fully Christian. After this point, I also began to make friends who were pagan. On various trips, I met people who became friends who were Muslim, have origins in the Native American faiths, Catholics, Buddhists, and of course, other Mormons and Jack Mormons. In Utah, after the conversation with a member of my home church, I thought of a phrase that resonated as truth to me, and this is what I still say to this day. There is truth and non-truth in all religious faiths. I'm not the all-knowing, so I can't say that there are lies or deceptions. I also remember thinking that there must be a faith out there that unifies them all, and people find what's true to them. I was, at that point, Unitarian Universalist before I knew the name existed or what it meant. For someone with PTSD, though, personal identity is a grounding mechanism. If I weren't Baptist, was I being disloyal to the people who helped raise me? It took 20 years to realize that by going where I felt my gut and God were leading me, I was keeping with the faith that I was taught. Because when you're not following the path, when you're not following your true path, the universe will give us a proverbial spanking. During my PTSD treatment, I found dialectical behavioral therapy, otherwise known as DBT, which is based in psychology and a lot of the tenets of Buddhism, most helpful. So I identify now as Unitarian Universalist, even though I haven't ever joined, but under the tenets that I find truth as a Christian, Buddhist, Taoist, and pagan. After watching the PBS special about the story of Wade Steele and Martha Sharp and how they helped smuggle Jews out of Europe using fake British and American passports, along with how many Protestant and Catholic American Christians are now weaponizing Christianity into Christian nationalism, which is how Representative Desjardins votes in restricting people's personal life decisions, I figured out which group I wanted to be associated with. Guilty by association. I don't bring up my friends of other faiths to grandstand or to be the gatekeeper, but it ties back into my childhood. If I had lived in a larger city, I could have found solace in Catholicism, Islam, Buddhism, etc. This would have been especially true had I been born in another country. So who am I to pass blame or judgment on people if they are living their truth on their own path? We can't walk each other's path. We can only walk our own. My current path is that I still have the same irreverence for power, which we know begets power. Power begets power. I will keep speaking this truth to power to the opposing party, but still too to my own party, who believe they are gatekeepers to what's good and right, but also cannot admit they need reform as well. I'll leave you with one Bible verse that applies to how we stand up for one another. That's Psalm 94:16. Who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Or who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity? So if you don't stand up for everyone else around you who's different from you, who will there be left to stand up for you when they're gone? And lastly, Winston Churchill. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. I guess that's all I've got to say.
Very good.
Thank you. All right, so we are going to do our closing hymn, which is number 414 in our hymnal. Who wants to stand up and lead us in song?
You got it.
All right, so everyone can stand up.
As we leave this friendly place, love gives light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
Thank you, and take peace and love with you.